Hello and welcome to Health 247 on Rapid Television, the program that brings you trusted health insights, experts' advice and inspiring real-life stories. In today's edition, we will take a closer look at stroke, another condition closely related to hypertension that has tragically led to untimely death. This is Health 247 on Rapid Television. Stroke, often sudden, often devastating, is one of the leading causes of death and disability worldwide, and its impact is rising here in Nigeria. It occurs when blood flow to the brain is interrupted either by a blockage or a rupture of blood vessels, depriving brain cells of oxygen within minutes. Increasingly linked to conditions like high blood pressure, poor diet, and lifestyle changes, stroke is no longer a distant health issue. It is affecting families and communities across the country. But the good news is that many cases are preventable and early action can save lives. Today, we take a look at what stroke is, why it is on the rise, and what you can do to protect yourself and your loved ones. A stroke is a medical condition that happens when blood flow to a part of the brain is suddenly interrupted or reduced, preventing brain tissue from getting oxygen and nutrients. This can occur either due to a blockage known as ischemic stroke or a ruptured blood vessel, which is referred as hemorrhagic stroke. It is considered a medical emergency because brain cells begin to die within minutes of losing oxygen. The longer treatment is delayed, the higher the risk of permanent brain damage, disability, or death. Immediate medical attention can save lives and significantly improve recovery outcomes.
So stroke is a neurological event that can happen suddenly or in an acute situation due to the absent supply of blood to the brain. We have two types of stroke. We have the ischemic stroke and we also have the hemorrhagic stroke. The hemorrhagic stroke accounts for 15% of all stroke cases that present in the hospital. And that is to say that the ischemic stroke is the more common one, which is around 85% of the stroke population, and like population of patients who present to the hospital. Hemorrhagic stroke is when there is bleeding into the brain due to the rupture of a blood vessel, while the ischemic stroke can happen as a result of some, maybe due to atherosclerosis or a plaque that attempts to block the blood vessels and prevents blood from getting to the brain for perfusion.
The statistics that 1 in 4 adults may experience a stroke highlight how widespread and serious the condition is globally. Stroke is one of the leading causes of death and long-term disability worldwide, affecting millions of people each year. This high risk reflects growing factors such as high blood pressure, poor diet, lack of exercise, smoking, and aging populations. It means stroke is not a rare event, it is a major global health concern that places a heavy burden on families, healthcare systems, and economies. In simple terms, it shows that stroke can affect almost anybody, making awareness, prevention, and early treatment critically important.
Globally, stroke has become a very serious issue because of the number of people who will develop stroke or who have had stroke in their lifetime. It's usually around 1 in 3.5 to 4 for every 4 persons in the population. And this is a very serious concern to us who are, health workers and even people in general. Now, the reason why this is very concerning is because of the fact that we have more people in the population who have stroke, and also the fact that stroke comes with its own consequences, it comes with its own debilitating effects. Sometimes it could cause paralysis in people, and then there are people also who, because of this condition, it has also limited their own ability to function properly in life. It has also limited their mobility. It's also high capital intensive because of the medications that has to be procured for stroke patients. Not only that, we also talk about physiotherapy. The cost of its physiotherapy is not very cheap. And also, when we talk about caregivers, the burden on caregivers, because for looking at the statistics, we have 1 in 4 persons having stroke. So it means that almost every family, we have a member who have stroke. And that means that 1 or 2 persons in a family will have to resort to caregiving activities or support. And that could greatly limit even their social lives and also the quality of lives generally of not only the stroke patient, but also those taking care of them. And it's also financially tasking because for those who are career-minded, might need to have to employ full-time workers or nurses that will tend to these people at home. So when we talk about the financial implication, we also talk about the psychological toll that it takes not only on the stroke patient, but also on their loved ones. Then we see that this is a real concern and something that needs to be looked into.
Hypertension, known as high blood pressure, is a major driver of stroke because it damages blood vessels over time. In Nigeria, where hypertension is widespread and often undiagnosed or poorly controlled, it accounts for about 20% of stroke cases. This means many strokes could be prevented with early detection, proper treatment, and lifestyle changes. The early warning signs of stroke often come on suddenly and should never be ignored, as quick action can save a life and reduce long term damage.
In our country, Nigeria, hypertension accounts for a greater number of people who have stroke. However, it's also good to note here that when it comes to stroke, there are other causes of stroke, but our main focus is hypertension because this is a more common thing that is found amongst us. And also, hypertension is a condition that usually goes undiagnosed in Nigeria. So we have so many people who have hypertension who are not aware of it, or even when they are aware, do nothing about it. So it goes uncontrolled for years until their blood pressure increases and then results in stroke. Now, another thing to also note that is that at times, for those who have been diagnosed of this condition called hypertension, sometimes they get non-compliant in taking their medication. So even when they present to the hospital and they are told that this condition needs more focused attention, they need to be more intentional in lifestyle modifications as well as taking their medications, many of them do not comply. So over time, this thing gets higher and then becomes uncontrolled. And if care is not taken, they would end up having stroke in the long run. So it's not even uncommon to see that even younger people come down with stroke. So it's actually a very, very high contributing factor in our society. And I also want to note here that our feeding, our diet too plays a very important role. A lot of us still love to take very spicy food. We love foods that are very tasty, very spicy. We want to take fried foods. And then, sedentary lifestyle. We don't want to exercise. We prefer to just sit on the couch. And so these things actually contribute. And one good thing is this: hypertension is a modifiable risk factor. If you can be more aware of your health status and also do something to be able to tackle the blood pressure whenever you discover that you have a high blood pressure, then it will help to reduce the risk of somebody coming down with stroke.
Experts warn that arriving at the hospital more than 6 hours after stroke symptoms begin is extremely dangerous because the most effective treatments, such as clot busting drugs and certain procedures, must be given within a limited time window to work properly.
So when it comes to stroke, it's very, very important that we have this knowledge at our disposal publicly. And it's the fact that when stroke occurs, it's always very important to recognize it as soon as possible, because that will also help to help the doctor or whoever the attending physician is to be able to give the proper intervention or medication in order to reduce the consequences or the effect of the stroke in the long run. So I will use the mnemonic FAST, FAST. Okay, so F stands for facial droop. That's when you notice that the person you are addressing or you are talking to, one side of the face is dropping to one, like going down, or maybe you see that the side of the lip is dropping, or what we call droop. That's the F. So facial droop is something you should take note of, face drooping. Then A, we talk about arm weakness. The person might just suddenly complain that they are not able to lift one arm, maybe the left or the right, depending on the side that is affected. So you might have this difficulty of lifting the arm, or it will just tell you that the arm feels heavy. Okay. Then slurring of speech. So you notice that the person is dragging their words. They cannot pronounce a word completely or fully. So T stands for time. We normally say something that time is brain, and it's very important because it's very important to know when this started, so that within 4 to 6 hours the onset, the person is able to present to a health facility or a stroke center where they can get the necessary intervention possible. Then others you can also look out for will be something that has to do with confusion. So you can ask the person, where are you going? And the person says he doesn't know. He's confused, he's appearing confused. The person walks a few steps forward and then suddenly turns back, like acting in a very confused state. So confusion too is one of them.
Simple lifestyle changes can greatly reduce the risk of stroke, including maintaining a healthy diet rich in fruits, vegetables, and whole grains while cutting down on salt, sugar, and unhealthy fats. Regular physical activity, keeping a healthy weight, and avoiding smoking are key steps, along with limiting alcohol intake. Managing conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, and high cholesterol through routine checkups and medication when needed is also essential. Together, these habits help improve overall heart and brain health and significantly lower the chances of stroke. According to experts, when someone shows signs of a stroke, immediate action is critical. They said it is advisable to call emergency services right away and get the person to the nearest hospital without delay, noting the time symptoms started.
So we are talking about hypertension being one of the risks for having stroke. And I'm not just saying hypertension. I'm talking about uncontrolled hypertension. Hypertension that has been left to sit down for months, even years, without being checked or being controlled. Now, if we are able to take care of this singular risk factor, it's going to actually reduce one's risk of developing a stroke. First of all, I will encourage people to, because there's also a family history of stroke. If there is a member of the family that has stroke, that can increase one's chances also of developing the condition. So know what your family history is, that's one. Secondly, if you have been diagnosed of hypertension, please do well to get checked, do well to take the medication that you need to take. There are other modifiable risk factors, such as losing weight if you are obese, if your BMI is very high, you lose weight. Another one also is your diet, because somehow, since hypertension has been linked to stroke, And we know that one of the risk factors for having hypertension is diet. So you want to take note of what your intake. Avoid the fried foods. Eat more of vegetables. Eat more of nuts. Eat more fruits, and then lean protein and lean fat. And then exercise a lot. Exercise, exercise, exercise. Keep active.
Controlling blood pressure after surviving a stroke is absolutely critical, as high blood pressure is the leading risk factor for another stroke. Without proper management, survivors face a significantly higher chance of reoccurrence, which can be more severe or even fatal.
When it comes to blood pressure control in relation to stroke, especially after somebody has survived a stroke. Now, one of the risk factors for stroke is the previous history of stroke. So it means that somebody will likely have a stroke, especially if the stroke was as a result of uncontrolled hypertension. So following a stroke event and recovering from a stroke event, blood pressure is very, very important, because apart from the fact that it's a cause, okay, apart from the fact that for the two types, I'll put it this way, for the two types of, two causes of stroke or types, we have the hemorrhagic and the ischemic stroke. Blood pressure actually plays roles in this. It can cause hemorrhage if there is a rupture, because when the blood pressure is not controlled and there is a pressure build-up in the blood vessels, and there is damage to the linings of the blood vessels, it can cause the blood vessels to rupture in the process and bleed into the brain. So for somebody who has had a stroke before, the need to be more intentional about controlling the blood pressure is very important and imminent. It's something that we don't negotiate. It has to be done. Secondly, increased blood pressure can also cause problem in the heart. Now, when that happens, there will be normally the heart is meant to go in a particular rhythm, and if that rhythm for one reason or the other has been compromised or disrupted, it becomes irregular rhythm, and that irregularity can introduce what we call an embolus that will travel to a part of the brain and occlude or block a blood vessel there and not allow blood to perfuse the brain properly. So hypertension control or blood pressure control is a very, very important risk factor, and thankfully it's a very modifiable one. It's something that we can control through regular checkup, taking the medication, being under monitored care, monitoring what we eat, doing exercising, adequate exercise, and also losing weight where we need to lose weight. Early intervention for stroke might not necessarily reverse the damage in all patients. However, it can, well, in some, yes, it will reverse, depending on the location of the stroke in the brain, and also depending on also the age. Age too is a very important factor when we want to talk about stroke. And then depending on if the patient has other conditions, maybe like diabetes or some other things. Another thing is this too: if the person has had a previous history of stroke and presents with stroke again, that is something to actually consider, in stroke management. But I will still say this, that time is always still of the essence. If the person presents on time, there are medications that are very efficacious within the first 4 to 6 hours, that when the patient takes it, it will help to reintroduce blood supply back to certain parts of the brain that were affected because of the stroke, but not necessarily dead. So it's possible that some brain cells can be affected in the process, but that can still be salvaged with early intervention. So time is very important. Early presentation is very important. Knowing those symptoms too are very important. For instance, you're talking with a relative and you begin to recognize the symptoms, you quickly take action and get the person as quickly as possible to the hospital.
Stroke is becoming more common in Nigeria, largely due to a mix of lifestyle, health system, and demographic changes. Increasing rates of risk factors like hypertension, diabetes mellitus, obesity, and smoking are major contributors, driven in part by urbanization, unhealthy diets, and reduced physical activity.
Hypertension, which is a very important condition or risk factor, is what causes stroke in many people in Nigeria. We also lack a culture of going to the hospital. We only think that the hospital is meant for when you're sick. When you cannot, home remedy has failed, and then you have to present late at the hospital. More often than not, so many people present late in the hospital when the damage would have even been done. For some people who have had stroke, never even knew that they were previously hypertensive. So it was a stroke that even made us realize that, this is the reason why the stroke happened in the first place, due to uncontrolled blood pressure. So in a place like Nigeria, where we lack that culture of checking up ourselves, going to the hospital and ensuring that we comply with doctors' instructions. Also, there is many of them complain, because of the low socio-economic status of many Nigerians. There is that ongoing complaint of not being able to afford adequate medical care. So many of them abscond or just avoid going to the hospitals because of having to pay money for tests and procuring medication. And then another thing too is even access to these healthcare facilities. Not many healthcare facilities are equipped to cater to people who have this condition. So as a result of that, it's not accessible to many of them. And some of these tertiary healthcare facilities are located far away from the region where they live. So these are some of the drawbacks or challenges that we have in a place like Nigeria, and why stroke still persists. We also need public education. A lot of us need to be enlightened, public enlightenment. Many of us are not aware of even the risk factors of uncontrolled hypertension. So over time, they have this condition, and then which causes a lot of serious problems in their health. So for us to prevent stroke or preventing stroke in Nigeria, first of all, I will say that stroke is not a sudden or unexpected event. It happens as a result of something over a period of time. And if we can check those factors, notably hypertension, uncontrolled hypertension, and we are able to checkmate it, then it's going to greatly reduce the risk of somebody having stroke. Also, I would want to say this: time is brain. So the moment you notice a family member having those symptoms, the first symptoms, please have the first symptoms at the back of your mind. The moment you're able to evaluate it, please take the patient or take the person to the nearest hospital as soon as possible. Do not waste time. Even if it ends up not being a stroke, it is better to err on the side of caution than not to even take action at all.
One key message Nigerians should remember about preventing stroke is that controlling major risk factors, especially hypertension, can dramatically reduce their risk.
Stroke is a serious but largely preventable health challenge that can be controlled through simple actions like regular checking blood pressure, eating a healthy diet, staying physically active, and seeking early medical care. Equally important is knowing the warning signs and responding quickly, since timely treatment can save lives and reduce long-term damage. With greater awareness, prevention, and fast action, many stroke-related deaths and disabilities can be avoided. Thank you for watching Health 247 on Rapid Television. Tune in next week for more health insights on another hypertensive-related ailment. Until then, eat well, stay healthy, and take care. I am Josephine Bitrus.